Today I have in my hands the new Anbernic RG35XX Plus. The previous model was an absolute success for having a great display and for being very portable. An awesome companion, easy to carry and to always have with you, with thousands of games from 8, 16 and 32-bit systems, besides the original PlayStation. Now we have the upgrade with Plus on the name, that despite being aesthetically very similar, it has more battery, had some changes done on some buttons and consequently the ergonomics, and has a more powerful chip, now capable of emulating Nintendo DS, Dreamcast, PSP and more, and without breaking the bank. But let's see if it delivers. Welcome to the Oasis. The unboxing for these devices are always the same. Handheld, charging cable, manual, wipes, screen protector. Since this is a new version of an existing handheld, in this video I want to focus on the differences and upgrades of the Plus model. It's got the same screen size, 3.5 inches with a 4:3 aspect ratio, and the same size overall. The exception is that the Plus is a bit thicker. The most visible changes in the front, besides select and start being a little lower and the menu a little higher, is the D-pad. It has a different shape on the new model, and it's the same Anbernic uses on more expensive handhelds like the RG35M. It's softer than the previous model with a little less resistance, with a very smooth rotation. The edges are also more rounded and more comfortable, giving your thumb a little break. It behaved incredibly well on my tests and I had no problems with false diagonals. It features a medium travel distance and it rests above the shell when fully pressed. Nothing changed on the top, bottom and on the sides, but we have a few important changes on the back. The shoulder buttons change shape, creating this little curve here. It feels now that your index fingers can rest on top of them more naturally. Besides that, the ergonomy is the same as the original. It's definitely not the best, but you can adapt. My main issue are the fighting games. A bigger vertical handheld like the RG405V fits and feels much better in your hands, give you more support for Hadoukens. And since this one is much smaller, you don't have that here. Sure, you can get your palms to touch the sides of the device to get the support you need, but it's not a comfortable and sustainable position for a long gameplay session. For any other type of game, it's perfectly usable. We can also see the change in the battery capacity from 2100 mAh to 3300. And now it's removable. You just need to take this screw off. Much easier access if you have a problem and need to exchange it. Basically, these are the physical differences between the two models, but of course, we have the internal specs. I created this graphic so you can easily visualize the differences. We have the things I mentioned already, but now I want to focus on the inside. The chip used on the Plus model is the H700, more powerful and now able to run Nintendo DS, Dreamcast, PSP and more. We also have 1 GB of RAM, upgraded from the 256 MB of the previous model. And that's going to help with this harder to emulate systems. The software is pretty much the same as the original, but now we have a RetroArch option where we can access these new systems, Pico 8, ports and more. And yes, you can install a custom firmware that will give you more options and make everything smoother. But today I want to focus only on the factory firmware, because I know a lot of people won't have the patience and the time to install and configure a new firmware. In settings on the new model, you'll find Wi-Fi and Bluetooth options as well as RetroArch that we didn't have previously. Bluetooth is simple and intuitive. Just go to Bluetooth settings, enable Bluetooth and search device. It connected to my FlyDigi Dirove 2 in seconds and it worked flawlessly. If you don't know this gamepad, I recently did a video review and it's a great bang for your buck. But if you want to connect this handheld to a TV or monitor over HDMI, you can pair a Bluetooth controller and you have a mini tabletop emulation machine. Now about the display, I confess I was a bit surprised. The Plus model has less brightness than the original model. In display effect, I chose the same option on both, fast, as well as brightness level 5. Side by side with the same game, the difference is very clear. The original is slightly brighter, as we can see in the water behind Sonic, and also the picture as a whole. I don't know if this is software related or if they changed the display itself, but it's possible this can be fixed with a software update or maybe a custom firmware. But enough talking, let's test some games. Of course, 8, 16 and 32-bit systems will work just fine without any issues. 4x3 systems look great, filling the whole screen without distortion. One positive is that you can adjust the aspect ratio for non-4x3 systems like GBA. You get the two black bars, but at least you won't get any picture distortion. But I know there's a lot of people that prefers everything in full screen. The original PlayStation already runs great on the first RG35XX, but here we have the option to enhance the graphics. Press the menu button, go to Options and go down to Enhanced Resolution. And look at the difference. Look at the car shadows and the text on the boards. It really is night and day. I tested several games with the enhanced graphics and they all played great. Nintendo DS also works great without major issues, but honestly, I don't think it's a good system to enjoy on this device. The screen is too small and without touch, the games you can play are limited. The good thing is that we already have pre-configured shortcuts mapped on the shoulder buttons, so you can swap screens and it helps a lot. But still, the overall DS experience is not great. But if you want to test some games, the option is here. Atomic Wave is a complicated system to emulate on weaker devices. But here, most of the games are very playable. Dolphin Blue, that normally looks like a slideshow on other devices, is running great. Dreamcast is another new system available and most of the games run well. Ikaruga, that's notably difficult to emulate on weaker devices, is very playable. All other Dreamcast titles I tried played well, but without an analog stick, depending on the game, you have a compromised experience. You reach this device's limit with PSP. 2D games work relatively well, but 3D games are hit or miss. You can make them a little more playable by adding frame skip and turning on lazy texture caching. Just go to Menu, Options, Video, choose one in frame skip and change lazy texture caching to on. It's not a miraculous solution, but it helps a little. And just like Dreamcast, the lack of an analog stick makes some games difficult to play. The Anbernic RG35XX Plus is a good upgrade over its predecessor. You can multiplayer over Wi-Fi. The Bluetooth gives more meaning to the HDMI port, adding the possibility of pairing gamepads and enjoy retro gaming on a bigger screen. The software, despite being limited, it's more polished and with more configuration options. And the more powerful chip and more RAM are welcome upgrades, bringing more power to run systems not previously supported. But not everything are rainbows and butterflies. The lack of an analog stick makes the experience limited in some systems. PSP performance lets a lot to be desired. You can count on your fingers the games you'll be able to play. And the display, that for an inexplicable reason has less brightness than the original. But if you want to see my review of the Direwolf 2 gamepad, click over here. Like, subscribe and follow us.